No, every time that you speak, you're on the screen, and we are live now, as a matter of fact. Hey, everyone.
We're live! Oh, my God.
Welcome to Comic Artist Pro Secrets. I'm Ethan Van Sciver, just a humble ink and superhero merchant. Actually, a little bit proud tonight. Feeling a little bit of pride swelling in my chest as I introduce to you our special guest tonight, who is the greatest Spider-Man writer of all time, in my opinion. Mr. Dan Slott.
I'm sorry. No, that doesn't fly with Stan Lee and Roger Stern and J.M. DeMatteis. And no, I'm just the guy who has held on to the chair the longest.
Narrow it down. Who's the number one Spider-Man writer of all time, in your opinion, and artist?
I can't do that because it's. I'm sure you feel this with Green Lantern guys. It's kind of like you get into a fraternity. You know, like you're one of the lucky guys where you got to work on that character, and during your career, you get to sit down and talk with everybody and hang out with everybody, and it's a dream come true. Like, no, I did a signing in the middle of the country. It wasn't Iowa. It was like Idaho, or something. I can't remember where it was now. I'm blanking. But Roger Stern happened to be in town for his college reunion, and he saw I was gonna, and he just came in the back of the shop, and we hung out in the back, and they didn't even know Roger Stern was there, and we just had like a little afterwards, like a powwow, and just talking about stuff and swapping stories. And you're like, it's weird, like DeFalco, Stan Lee, J.M. DeMatteis, Marv, Len, all these guys I got to meet. And Michelini, one of the bits of advice every single Spider-Man writer gave me, every single guy, some of them said it slightly differently, but it was very much like that scene from Star Trek Generations with Kirk and Picard. They're like, don't let them get you out of that chair. Ooh. Like, when you're in that chair, you get to write Spider-Man. When you leave, they never ask you.
You're finished writing Spider-Man at that point.
Yeah. Every single guy had a different version of saying, stay there as long as possible. Don't leave the chair. Just do the job, because when it's over, when you leave, that's it. And have you walked away from jobs? Like, there were jobs where you went like, I'm done, and you walk away? You don't have to say what it is.
Yeah, there have been times. Yeah, you bet. Usually I'm pulled off by Jeff Johns. He'll say, no, you're done that. You're doing this.
Oh, we need you on Flash. Stat.
Right, exactly. All right, so let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you. I want to know, I want to go back, okay? Before we get into it, we're going to be discussing Silver Surfer number 12, which is an interesting issue here because Dan basically has said that this was meant to be his final issue. So he wrote this issue as though it was the finale, and then they tacked on 2 more issues on top of that. So that must have been unusual.
Well, we knew at one point we kind of knew we were going to end, probably around issue 7. We knew the trajectory of the book, and we knew we were probably going to end around issue 12. And we lobbied for 2 more issues, but there was a time where 12 could have been the end, or 14 could have been the end, and that was interesting because it was an interesting writing challenge, because it meant, like, are you going to end here or are you going to end there? And you want to leave people with a good resolution. So issue 12 was one of these issues where there were so many factors in play. That's an interesting issue to talk about the writing process.
Very good, very good. Okay, so we will get to that. That's going to be the kind of act 2 of this. Act 1 is going to be getting to know Dan Slott, his origin story. Okay, we want to establish you. This is conflict. I guess this is act 2. This is where, we talk about this. And then act 3 will just be a little bit of a Q&A. You can go as long as you want. So I don't know. They're asking me in the chat if you can actually see the chat right now. Can you see that?
I can't see the chat.
All right. So I'll choose questions.
Okay.
I'll ask questions.
So that means all you got. You can be as rude as you want. You can just be completely hostile. You can let your internet id just run free. I ain't seeing it.
I'm seeing it. Dan's not seeing it. Yeah, there you go. I'll choose good questions. And you guys can ask tough questions when it comes to be that time, and that's perfectly okay. But you know, good you know, questions will be chosen at that point until Dan feels like going to bed.
Oh,
Right,
the whole reason this is up here is this is actually the mighty whiteboard.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I threw some posters up and a whole bunch of magnets so that no one can see the
plans,
massive secrets of Spider-Man plans.
I see something.
No. You see, like, there's a little bit of words. Wait.
Cover that.
Yeah, that's not.
I think. Does it say Ben Grimm, or am I?
No. That's part of a larger word.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's. But good eye. And this is a ticket to the Nighthawk Cinema that I won in a trivia contest. So there you go.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you.
So, where did you grow up?
I grew up in suburban, like it was right out of Steven Spielberg suburban movies, like, you know, when you pull back in Poltergeist or E.T., and they all have that same look. I grew up in Stockton, California, and it was very 70s and very idyllic, you know, like looked like the Brady Bunch house. And that's when I fell in love with comics. So we're talking like 7, 8. And then when it was time for high school, junior high, my family moved to London. And that was trippy because that meant I was suddenly in a big city. I could get on, I had the subway pass, the tube pass that could get me from home to school. But it allowed me to go through every major travel zone because we were far enough away. And it meant I had this magic card that could allow me as a teenager to go anywhere in the city. And suddenly I was in a town that had a comic book shop, multiple comic book shops. And I was getting all the British comics, the 2000 AD and, you know, all the, you know, Brian Boland stuff and Alan Moore stuff right when it was coming out, and still getting my American comics. So that was like an interesting time for me as a kid. And then back to school for college in California again. But by then you have a car, and then getting comics are super easy. And then you're suddenly going to shows, and then straight from college to Marvel Comics.
All right, slow down. I want to actually go back, way back, and just say, what? So you're 7, you're 8. That's when you discover comic books. Why? What happened? How did you find them?
I had a cousin, my cousin Meyer, and that would have been like for 2 years before I moved to California. We lived in New Jersey, and we would always, my uncle, the rabbi, we would go to his house for Passover, and my cousin Meyer, in the basement, he had all the comics. They had a ping pong table, they had a giant teddy bear thing that was huge. Air hockey kind of stuff, but that's where he had all his comics, and all the stuff that he liked were DC war comics, DC and Marvel war comics, and horror comics. Yeah, House of Mystery, House of Secrets, 13 Ghosts, all that stuff. And that stuff freaked me out, except for the Kubert, the Joe Kubert stuff, the Sergeant Rock and the Enemy Ace. But he wasn't into superheroes, with the exception that since he liked Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, he liked Jack Kirby. And since he liked Jack Kirby, the one superhero book he had in his and this was before long boxes. This one he just put comics in cardboard boxes.
Right.
He had Fantastic Four, and he thought I'd like superheroes more than war or horror comics. And he gave me the first 3 comics I got to read were the Galactus trilogy.
Huh.
That started me on comics. And that's going right past like soft drugs and straight to like crack. It's like, here's the Galactus trilogy. That screwed me up for life. And then as a kid in California, I knew who Spider-Man and Batman were, because if I got on my bike and I went home as fast as possible from grade school, I could get in just in time to see they had a block, which was the Spider-Man 67 cartoon, and the Adam West Batman was an hour block, in Stockton, California. And so I knew who Spider-Man and Batman were. This is a story, like I've told this story in, I think the letters page is 700. I told this story, like Brevoort would make me tell this story at cons. So people have probably heard this before, but when I was a little kid, I hadn't bought comics. Like I knew they existed in my cousin's house, and that was like this. I thought that's where they came from. Like they only existed there.
Right.
And one day I'm biking home from school, and I go by the 7-Eleven where I'd always stop for candy and stuff. And there was this big poster with that John Romita Sr. Spider-Man that they used to have in the corner box where he's standing there. This giant poster of that saying that Spider-Man was coming to the 7-Eleven to sign comics. And I was the right age for it. I was, you know, a little Jewish boy who didn't have the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus. I was the right age going, Spider-Man is coming to my hometown. I ran in, I'm like, where are the comics? How do I get the comics for Spider-Man to sign? And the guy pointed to the spinner rack. And I'd been in that store like a zillion times and I never noticed it.
Yeah.
And it was like, for the first time, it was like, oh my God, comics. And I had like no money. I wasn't on an allowance yet. And I waited for my dad to come home, and he had an epic commute every day from Stockton to Modesto that he drove in this long line.
What did you do for a living that moved you to London?
He was a chemist, a chemical engineer who's also would manage the plant. And he was very good at being able to, you know, not just be the manager of the plant and know how all the science worked. So he did such a good job in California that it was part of Shell Chemical. They wanted him to oversee the plant in London, or the organization in London. But when he had this epic commute, when he would come home and he was tired, and I was the first thing when he ran in the door, I was like holding onto his leg, like, Dad, I need money because I need to buy comics for Spider-Man. And he said, you're old enough to do chores. I'll start you on an allowance. And how much do comics cost? And I told him 25 cents.
That ages you right there. That dates you.
And he gave me up front on good faith 25 cents to buy a comic and an advance on the next week. He gave me 2 quarters. Nice. So I went to 7-Eleven the very next day, and I went through. First I found out, like, can I come back? If I buy the comic today, can I come back with the comic? And they're like, sure. And I spent like the whole day trying to find the best 2 Spider-Man comics. And it was an issue of Amazing. It was an issue of Marvel Tales, reprinting a Spider-Man Electro fight, and a Marvel Tales issue with Spider-Man and the Beast versus the Griffin. That's why the Griffin recently appeared in the latest issue of Spider-Man, like 2 issues ago, because that's, you know, it's nostalgia. It's like, oh, he was like my first guy.
And Silver Surfer too apparently was very, very early on. I didn't discover Surfer until I was 13.
Surfer was my window. Surfer was my window into comics. But Spidey was like, you know, every kid knows who Spider-Man is, and he's the best. Except for Green Lantern and Flash, of course. No, but like I got my 2 comics, and this is the moment that just, pardon my French, it fucked me up for life, because I had my 2 comics. I went there early on my bike, and I camped out because I wanted to see Spider-Man swing in. So
swing in?
No, I was like, because I was totally buying it that this was Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, the only person there, like sitting on the stoop with my comics, and I'm looking in the sky for Spider-Man. And this is the 70s.
It's the era of Evel Knievel. I mean, it could have happened.
It could have happened, but this is the 70s, and this is the moment that it fucked me up for life, was because you remember, like with Carter and all the gas lines, there you could see near the 7-Eleven the freeway, and you could see all the cars all blocked up. And everyone was moving aside to let this one red pickup truck go through. And if you can imagine 2 guys in the 70s, and one of them has access to a Spider-Man costume, he was in the bed of the truck, standing up, arms akimbo. And everyone, you could just hear everybody cheering, like, and letting him through. And he drove off the freeway, came up to the 7-Eleven. I was like the only person there. And for my benefit, purely just to mess with my head. The guy leapt out of the pickup truck, landed in a Spider-Man crouch, and then just got up and walked in like it was nothing. Just
It's terrific. Good for him, for the kids.
I was like stunned, and I brought him the comics. I couldn't speak, and he signed both of them, Spider-Man. And then I went home. Within a couple days, the covers were ripped off because I had read those two comics, so many times.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, you got here's some comments from the crowd, by the way. Mystical Green Beanie says Dan has a glorious beard.
Oh, it is. It is. It's you know where the beard comes from.
Your face.
My face, yes. The secret origin of my beard is it comes from Axel Alonso.
What's that?
When I was working on Spider-Man 600, it was 600. Was it 600? It was 600 or 700. I can't remember. It was one of the hundreds. I was working, and I was like holed up in the apartment, and it had to be 700 because he was editor-in-chief. So I was holed up in the apartment, and I was just working nonstop. And I have this horrible neighborhood. It's too good. It's too convenient. Where I have on one end of the block, I have a 24-hour Dunkin' Donuts where I get my coffee.
Oh, no.
24/7. I've got a supermarket that I can it's on the same block with an ATM, and laundry that'll pick up laundry and deliver. So I can go through these horrible times where I just go in the cube if the assignment is, and you don't want to be the guy who screws up Spider-Man 700. So it wasn't like leaving the apartment. I was wearing pants, but it was like I just went and the beard. Yeah, the beard was just growing and growing, and I wasn't paying attention. And then I went into Marvel to check something out, and I had the big thick beard. And Axel Alonso called me into his office, and he never does that. And I'm like, am I in trouble? What did I do? And he closes the door, and he looks around, and he goes, keep the beard. And I go, what? He's like, you've got a baby face. No one respects you. Keep the beard.
Yeah. You know what? Like when I grew this, somebody said, because it was bigger at one point. Somebody said, you got a little Sean Connery thing going on. Don't ever get rid of that. And I went, I won't.
There you go.
Beards and baby faces. Somebody named the other people says, breaking news, Dan Slott is actually a good guy. How do you react to it?
I reacted like, this sounds like someone from the internet, but I think I'll read someone's interpretation of my tweets. Where they'll do like a voice of me on YouTube, or they'll go, and now read my tweet like this, and I'm like, or someone will put up a tweet going, wow, Dan Slott was on a rant. Yeah. And what you don't realize is when I'm typing it, half the time I'm laughing my ass off. And I'm just, it's this.
They don't get that. I have the same problem. People are like, you're angry. I'm like, no, I think this stuff is funny. I mean, the thing is, I'm amusing myself more than anything. I guess if you disagree with me, then it might sound mean to you, but I don't know. I think it's funny. So I get you there. I understand.
I get a thing where my take is it's like a door and I can shut it. So after I went through 700 and it got to a point where they had to bring me into Marvel, and they sat me down at a table, and there was someone there. I was expecting they told me there was some problem with security, and I was expecting Marvel's main security guy to be there, who I knew. And I was expecting maybe like a higher up, but it was the two of them, and it was some extra Marvel people, and it was someone from the district attorney's office and their assistant, and someone from the New York Police Department and their assistant, and someone from the New York Police Department Cyber Crimes Division and their assistant. And every single one of them had a giant stack of all the death threats we got for Amazing Spider-Man 700.
She was.
Yeah. I'm like, whoa. And they're going through all this stuff. And so many tweets and things and social media, or all these things where I've seen the worst of it. And it's not a question of thin skin. It's if you even look at me the wrong way, I don't need it. I close the door. You're muted or you're blocked, and that's it. Because I only have so many hours of my day to deal with this crap.
Okay, hold on. Mark Santos, I see your super chat. I'm going to remember your question, and I will ask Dan that question at the end. But it's
Is
just
it about
still
Indiana Jones or Doctor Who?
No, I'll ask you now. So Mark is 15 years old. He says, any advice for young aspiring writers?
When I used to teach a couple classes for writing, and I also I'll have young freelancers come to me for advice, because now I've been doing this for since 1990. And the first advice I always give is to young freelancers is put on pants. Put on pants. Whether you're a penciler, an inker, anything, you will get so much more done in the morning if you put on pants.
Now, why do you say that? What's your theory behind putting on pants? Do you think if you're underpanted, you're going to be more apt to lay them out?
There's this danger, like everyone goes, oh, you get to work from home, it's fun. But there's the danger that you're just going to get up in your pajamas and you're going to sit down and nothing's going to change. No, you need a snap. You need a snap that's the equivalent of getting out that door and getting on the subway and going to work. You need to snap into work zone, and you need to get your ass in the shower, and you need to get out, and you need to put on clothes, and you put on your goddamn pants. Because so many freelancers, that's
the weirdest advice for a young aspiring writer that I've ever heard.
Pants every day. Put on pants. One leg at a time, but do it. No. There's people who write who ask you questions about how do you overcome writer's block? Where do you get your ideas from? So the answer to that is, I'm sure you as an artist, you always had a sketchbook with you and you were always drawing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with a writer. The ideas come to you all the time.
What kind of ideas? Dialogue? You hear somebody say something, you write it down?
A story idea, a bit of business, a character, a twist on something. You will get ideas all the time. Anything that could be the little germ, the acorn that grows into something else. The important thing to do is to write it down. You don't want to be the guy where, like that Seinfeld episode where he thinks he has these great ideas at night, and then he wakes up in the morning and he can't remember them, so he gets the mini tape. You kind of need a mini tape. You need, that's what's great about these phones, man, with the memo. If you get the really good idea and you can't even wait, or you write it down. We're going to get to a thing in Surfer 12 where there was something on the whiteboard from the beginning of the run of Surfer, that a line of dialogue that didn't make it in until issue 12, which was our 27th issue. That you get your good ideas. It's not like a faucet. It doesn't come when you want it, but it does come all the time. So you constantly write it down. You don't leave the house without a pen and something to write on. You scribble that. You have to put it down. You have to have your file, and then you build it up. So you're always going to have ideas. So it's not a question of oh, what do you do when you need the idea? You go to
when you're not expecting them.
Yeah, you go to your book and you go,
you're ready.
And you're ready. Yeah. So it's
let's go to your teenage years real quick here. Let's see what happened. So did you give up comics as a teenager, or were you still actively reading them? I gave them up. When I was 15, I sold my collection and I started dating girls. I didn't come back until I was 19 or so.
I only had one period in my life where I went, no, I'm done with comics, and I stopped. And it wasn't when I was a kid. Me being a teenager and moving to London and getting access to all these comics that I'd never seen before, and being in London and in Europe, having the ability to get comics from other countries that I'd never seen before. You look at something like Frank Miller, when Frank Miller and Claremont did Wolverine. They're using Japanese comic styles of that time. They're robbing. They're being inspired by different comics of different countries, and they're bringing it to America. In some way, comics is our jazz. You know, it's this thing that we riff on, and there's all these different visual languages everywhere. So when I got to move to London and go to Forbidden Planet Comics and suddenly see, you know, I grew up in a world where the comics I were reading were DC and Marvel. And suddenly I had my eyes open to all these, a world of comics and back issue bins with underground comics like the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, or suddenly like this cornucopia of comics was open to me as a teen, and that was more exciting.
Great.
You know, I couldn't stop as a teen. I was suddenly getting immersed from all sides from comics I never could have gotten any other way. And it wasn't until I went to college that I stopped. And I was, I'm trying to remember what year it was, whether it was I know I was reading in my freshman year. But there was one point where I stopped, and I know exactly where I stopped in comic book time, which was the Mutant Massacre, the Fall of the Mutants, happened around the same time as DC Millennium.
Yep.
And there were these two, you know, company-wide crossovers that were coming at the exact same time, and we didn't have a lot of crossovers back then. You know, they were a rare thing when you'd have a company-wide crossover, and here you had two butting against each other, and each one was telling you, "Oh, you don't you dare miss, you know, this issue of Power Pack, or this issue of Daredevil, or here he's Thor, but he's a frog." But they're all in the Fall of the Mutants, and it all connects. And Millennium was telling you, "Oh, you better read every single DC book because these new characters in Millennium, the new Guardians, they're super important." And suddenly I was I was on a budget. I was in college, and suddenly I had to almost buy in my head because, oh my God, I had to know every comic of 2 lines of comic. And suddenly I'm eating peanut butter. I'm eating ramen noodles. You know, like I'm living off peanut butter and ramen noodles so I can afford to buy these giant stacks of comics every week.
That's what I missed about Marvel. And tell me if you feel the same way. Because I don't think it's there anymore, and it's not really there at DC anymore either. But the time period that you're talking about at Marvel, I was a Marvel zombie. I never read a DC book at this point. You would read an issue of Thor, and he'd be walking through the park, like Central Park, and it would be snowing in July, and it'd be like, "You want to find out why it's snowing in July? You need to read X-Men 247," and then they would all be interconnected. So basically, this was a real world, and it was you could immerse yourself in it as much as you had 75 cents. And that's I miss that. I really felt like Marvel Manhattan was a real place, and I knew everybody there. And that's, I think, one of the things that's falling apart about comics and editorial. What do you think?
We can get to that in a sec because I agree on some levels and not on others. But I know what you mean. Like, you'd walk through the park in a book on Thor and you'd see the X Factor building, you know, the ship. You know, when I was a kid, the coolest moment of that was I liked it when they did it this way, where if you were reading Avengers, you found out the secret of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver on Mount Wundagore being raised by Luna, and they were brought in by this woman named Magda. And if you were reading X-Men, Magneto was looking at his computer files, and he brought up this file of this woman named Magda, who is his greatest love, and he deleted the file. And neither book brought it up. So if you're reading both, you were like, "Oh my God, Magneto is Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch's dad. Oh my God." And so, like, fans who were reading both, and we didn't have internet, it wasn't easy to talk with each other. But if you were in that small group that read both, you were sitting on a secret that wasn't revealed for years. And it was like the coolest shit. And you would meet other fans and go, "Yeah, did you read that? Yeah, they're secretly, when are they going to reveal that?" You know, so... But I know what you're talking, that level of interconnectivity. But that's why I was so psyched for it. And when I read both stacks of these comics and you got to the end of it, and the end of Fall of Mutants, they promised you all these changes. Mutant Massacre, they promised you characters would die. And basically the only people who really died were Morlocks you never heard of. And I was like, I felt ripped off.
It was so ugly. It was hard to read. It hurt you.
Yeah, and I bought this giant stack of comics, and there was no payoff. And then on DC, with Millennium, they promised you all these new characters and that the new Guardians were going to be important, and the character designs felt bad, and everything about it was like, these guys are losers. I don't care about them. And I'm like, I just ate ramen noodles and peanut butter for months, and you screwed me. I got these stacks of comics. And I was like, I am done. I am finished with comics. I am never reading comics again. And I went cold turkey. And I went for a couple of years in college where I wasn't reading a single comic. And one day, we were doing a pizza night in my dorm. And they said, hey, could someone help pick up all the pizzas this pizza place doesn't deliver? And I was like, I'll do it. I got a car. So I drove down to pick up all the pizzas for my dorm. And they're like, oh, we are not ready. This is too many pizzas. We are not ready. And I'm like, yeah. And next door was a comic book shop. And I was like, I'll look, but I'm not going to buy anything because I had to wait. And then, like, I was in and I was looking around and I'm like, Marvel and DC, you know. But then there was this dollar bin where it was like 3 books for $1. And I'm like, and I was like determined I wasn't going to buy a Marvel or DC comic. And I picked up 3 books, and those 3 books screwed me because they were so fucking good.
What were they?
Ben Edlund's The Tick, when it was a black and white comic.
Yep.
I just got covers I thought looked cool. Ben Edlund's The Tick, Matt Wagner's Mage, like the first series, and Scott McCloud's Zot.
Wow.
I picked Zot, Mage, and
3
Tick.
winners, 3 big winners for in a cheapo bin.
Yeah, and I read them all while I read 2 of them while waiting for the rest of the pizzas, and I got the pizzas. I took them up. I read the last one after the pizza night, and I just fuck it. I got in my car the next morning, and I went back to that comic shop, and I went through that dollar bin, and I got all the Zots and all the Mages and all the Ticks that they had, and then that started me down the road again, where I'm like, oh, okay, I'll try a Spider-Man. Oh, I'll see what Superman's doing. All right. And then pretty soon I was going through back issue bins reading the year or 2 I missed. So, but I had my year or 2 of cold turkey, and then never again. And then right from college, straight to Marvel Comics.
How'd that happen?
Well, when I was in college, I did my own superhero book, my own superhero strip. It was like a 11 by 17 page every week, and they shrunk it down to like this much. You needed like a magnifying glass to read it. And it was a superhero in a post-apocalyptic world who surfed off nuclear blasts, mainly so I could draw a surfing superhero. I wonder why. And I started taking the pages to local shows and getting pointers from pros and like, what can I do? And, you know, it was back in the time when I thought I could draw, and I was an art minor, a theater major, doing screenwriting and script writing. And at one of the shows, I want to say, who was doing Guardians of the Galaxy? Like Jim Valentino.
Valentino.
Yeah. So I asked, Valentino was there, and I asked him, like, how do I break in? And a lot of the artists were blunt. They're like, you should be a writer. You know, like the art was terrible, but they could see the stories were fun. They're like, why don't you just write? Like, there's no pointers that could have saved me.
Was there one particular editor at Marvel who you remember who really brought you in and gave you?
Yeah, I went to Valentino and I asked him, how do I break in as a writer? And he said, it's impossible, but they have an internship program, and you should apply to be an intern, and then you could go in and you can meet people. And that's what I did. I went. One of my sisters in here in New York had a wedding, and I came up for the wedding, and I applied for the internship. But I had just graduated, so when I went in and I applied, they went, "Wait, you graduated?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just graduated like last month." And they're like, "Well, we can't use you. It's a college internship. It's unpaid. We pay you by giving you a credit. If we can't give you a credit, we can't use you. Sorry, goodbye." And I was kicked right out the door. I was in there for like maybe 5 minutes. And I have twin sisters. right? Which identical twin sisters. Like, how does this stuff end up in a comic? So one of them was getting married 6 months later. The other sister was getting married. So I had to come back to New York for the second wedding. And I went to my favorite college prof, and I had him write a bogus form saying I would get postgraduate credit if anyone bothered to read it. Mm-hmm. And I applied for the internship again, figuring they wouldn't remember me. And I lied, and I said I was still in college. And Fabian Nicieza took me in as his intern. Well, it was Evan Skolnick, this editor. And then later he became Fabian's assistant, and I was working for Fabian. But the important thing, because I've told this story in the past, and there'll be the occasional fan that gets really upset, like, you lied, you took someone's spot. I've had it like confirmed. There were multiple spots that hadn't been taken up that summer. I didn't take anyone's spot by lying and getting into Marvel Comics.
And so, retrospectively, turns out it was probably a good thing that you didn't get that spot, because look where you are now.
Oh no, I got it the second time. I lied and I got it.
Yeah.
So I was a college intern who'd already graduated from college, and I was there for like a couple months. And even as a college intern, and this is so frowned upon and not done now, but it was a different Marvel. I sold a story or two as a college intern.
For what?
I sold a story, Mighty Mouse, which was my first comic. A short story for a New Warriors backup with Speedball, and a short story with the Punisher for Punisher Summer Special #1. So I sold some stories as a college intern.
They're all pretty great.
Yeah.
Mighty Mouse.
But when I was there for a couple months, they came to me and said, "How would you like to have a position on staff?" And I was like, "Oh, I'd love to." And they go, "Oh, wait a minute, you can't have this staff position. You have to go back to college." And I was like, I lied. And they're like, "What?" You know, I lied. I already graduated. I came back the next day with my diploma and showed them I've already graduated with honors. I'm fine. And they went, "Okay," and they gave me a staff job. And back in that day and era, people on staff also wrote. They also drew. Nowadays, that is very frowned upon. You're very segmented. Editors edit, writers write. But back then, like, all the head of, the editor-in-chief and the senior editor and everybody who is an editor was also someone else's writer. Tom DeFalco, Bob Harris, Mark Grunwald, Bob Budiansky, all the guys who were editing were also writing a book when they went home. Yeah. Fabian was writing like 5 or 6 of them when he was an editor. It was a different time. And I got to a point where once they gave me my first freelance, my first monthly book, where I left staff and I just went, I'm going to write full time. This is great.
Were you scared? So, was it a risk?
Yeah, it was a risk. Everything in life's a risk, but it was you jump off and you take it. It was Ren and Stimpy.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, so I was doing the Ren and Stimpy book, and what it really came down to was, at one point I wanted to be on editorial, and I'd been an assistant editor for a couple people. Usually when someone went off on vacation or someone, I was like a fill-in assistant editor, and I really wanted to be work my way up through editorial. And the job I had was art returnist for Marvel.
Oh my God, you're that guy.
Yeah,
you're the guy that hangs on to art for 6 months after the book comes out.
No, I'd be the guy who was forced to sit on the book for 6 months after the book come out because artists wouldn't send in their freaking art release forms, and then I would have to hunt them down. And you get these moments where people would come up to the office, and I'd be like, "That's the guy who hasn't returned 12 art release forms," and I would hunt him down and I'd force him to sign it, and then I would hand him giant stacks of artwork. But it had its benefits. There are wonderful moments. Like one of the days I did that to both Mike Mignola and Jim Lee. they're both sitting there with these giant stacks of art in my office. And they did this thing that artists usually did in that scenario, where each guy is showing the other guy his stuff, and the other guy's giving pointers to the other, you know. And I'm sitting there being a fly on a wall, going, "This is awesome." Because at one point, Jim Lee says to Mike Mignola, "I love how you spot blacks. How do you do that?" And Mignola flips over a page and starts doing an art lesson in front of Jim Lee, and I'm just like sitting there,
that's great.
You know, keep it together, Slott. Keep it together. Yeah. But you also became like everybody's best friend, especially at convention season. Like Todd McFarlane would call me up on the phone and go, "Buddy,"
yeah,
yeah, because everyone wants their art. And I remember being at this one con with a friend of mine who came up through. We became friends when he was an intern too, and he went on to work for the Daily Post. And we're just sitting there talking in the food court. And one by one, all these famous artists are walking by in the background, and each one of them's going like, "Hey, Dan." I'm like, "Hey, Walt Simonson." Now, anyway, and one by one, each guy comes by, and it's like some huge star, and they all went, "Hey, Dan," first. And my friend's like, "Why do they all know you?" You know, I got them all their art back, man.
That's terrific. All right, so
I met Ditko.
You did?
I met Ditko.
How did you meet Steve Ditko? That's gigantic.
I'm in the art return department, and I get the last job he did for Marvel was Squirrel Girl, and I get the Squirrel Girl job, and I'm like, holy shit, I've got to return art to Ditko, and this really dates it. I go to the Rolodex, and I have this massive Rolodex with everybody's name and address on it. And I'm like, never done this before. And I'm flipping it to Ditko. And I'm like, this is surreal. And I get to the Ditko card, and there's no address. There's only a phone number. And I'm like, oh, shit.
Private guy.
Yeah, I'm like, boop, 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 boop. Like, hi. And it picks up. Hello. I'm like, Mr. Ditko? He's like, yes. My name is Dan. I'm the art returnist for Marvel. I have your Squirrel Girl job. I need an address to send you an art release form. And he's like, I live in the city. I'll drop by. And then he just hangs up. And I'm just sitting there like, holy shit. Ditko. Yeah, Ditko just comes by my office with his little like jaunty hat. And he comes in and he, you know, signs the forms. I give him the art. And well, the whole time I'm just sitting there going, in my head, going, don't talk about Spider-Man. Don't talk about Doctor Strange. Don't talk about because I don't.
Were you cool?
I was cool.
I wouldn't have been cool. I would ask for an autograph and a little Spider-Man sketch.
Okay. No Spider-Man. No Spider-Man. No Doctor Strange.
Oh, he's got some bad feelings about Spider-Man or something. I heard something like that. You don't have to get into that.
No, but there is a while, like you can see when he came back to Marvel for a while later in his career, where you look at all the jobs he drew. He would draw stories for characters he hadn't created. Like he would draw an Avengers annual and do the Hulk and all those characters, but no Spider-Man, no Doctor Strange.
That is so weird.
No, he's very, you know, he is Mr. A. You know, he has a rule and he sticks by it.
What? See, I want to ask all kinds of questions, but I don't want you to have to talk at it.
Like, if you created Spider-Man and you didn't get, like, you know, for years, co-creator credit or whatever, and there's like a big-ass Spider-Man balloon going by in the Thanksgiving Day parade and kids walking up and down the street with Spider-Man toys, you'd probably feel a little bad about it.
You get a little bad feeling in your heart. I hope Marvel's made good on that. I know DC is kind of going all around trying to make amends about a lot of that stuff, and for the families are taken care of.
Yeah, Marvel, I honestly believe Marvel is done reach out to creators of all eras. Like, I don't know about you, but like whenever, I'm sure you do this too, whenever I do a show, my deal is, you know, with signing, I'll sign however much you want. I've started to limit it to 5 or 10 books because I did one show where I used to say, bring whatever you want and I'll sign it. And somebody brought a hand truck with one of every comic I'd ever written. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I promised. So I spent a whole day signing that guy's collection. But
and that's changed now. You're not doing that anymore.
It's tough, man. So I'll do like 5 to 10. I think is a fair number. But what I do now is like when I'm at shows, if you want me to sign more than 5, I ask for donations to the Hero Initiative.
Wonderful.
Yeah, because the Hero Initiative is like if you walk away from anything from this whole night, donate to the Heroes Initiative. It's to give money to creators who came up through the system when the system didn't look after them.
Who we're all benefiting from, by the way. Their work, all of us, whether you're a reader or a retailer or somebody, a professional, we're all kind of milking their brains.
Yeah. No, it's one of the weird things when people like introduce you and they go, "Oh, this is Dan Slott. He's a creator on Spider-Man." You're like, "No, I'm not." you know, that's Lee and Ditko. That's Lee, Ditko, and Ramita. That's those are. We all stand on the shoulders of giants.
That's true. How did you get Spider-Man now?
Oh man, I got Spider-Man because Mark Miller was sick, and another writer couldn't make it to one of the Marvel retreats. And this is back when I came back to Marvel in 2004 and was working on She-Hulk. Tom Brevoort knew from like ages ago that I was good in the room for like pitching ideas and throwing out ideas and being giving and helping find new, just ways to mess with it. And he said, "Hey, Dan lives in the city. We've got extra seats at the table. We don't have to fly him in. We don't have to put him up in a hotel. He's good in the room. Can we bring him in? Just so there's an extra voice in the room." And this is back when Joe Quesada was editor-in-chief. And Joe was like, "Well, it's catered." So I was brought in to like sit and eat. So, they didn't want food to go to waste. Yeah. So, but Joe also gave Tom a note, like, make sure he doesn't speak up too much. But since I was only doing She-Hulk, like a low-tier cult book, I didn't have a dog in any fight whenever people were being creative or throwing stuff out. So I was able to be very giving and, "Hey, have you thought about this for the X-Men?" Or, "Oh, you're doing this with that character? What if you did this?" Or just throwing things out, throwing out suggestions and playing with stuff. And it was either stuff they'd already come up with in other retreats, which proved to them I thought like them and therefore I was smart. Mm-hmm. Or it was new ideas where they went, "Oh, let's play with that for a while." So I was able to be very helpful to everybody on every kind of book. And by the end of it, Joe went up to Tom and went, "Bring him to the next one. See if he can do that again." So when I was in the next one, I had 2 really good retreats in a row, and they went, "Okay, when you get to be in that room, there are things that happen where you can, information, what stories are coming up. You've made a rapport with other editors. It's easier for you to like sell a story or sell an idea." And it was in one of those retreats where I knew that no one was doing anything with the Mark Miller setup for the initiative that he set up in Civil War. No one had any plans for it. So I pitched an initiative book, and Mark wasn't there. He was sick. Bendis heard it. Bendis called Miller, and he said, "What do you think?" And Mark liked it and said, "Yeah, that's a great book." And everyone gave it the thumbs up, and suddenly I was writing She-Hulk and the initiative. Yeah. And when they stole Steve Wacker from DC, he was doing 52.
Yeah, he was great. I love Steve.
Steve was great.
Is he still there? Steve still Marvel?
Steve's doing Marvel TV.
Oh.
He's now a bigwig in the TV world.
Yeah, he's terrific. I thought he was really funny.
He's fantastic. They had this idea that they had for ages where Amazing Spider-Man sells yay much, and then like Spectacular and Web spell less. Mm-hmm. So they all went, "Well, why don't we just call every book Amazing and run it 3 times a month, and then it'll sell more." That was the idea. Let's do an almost weekly Spider-Man comic. And when they saw it, but no editor would go near it. The logistics of it was a nightmare. It's so much extra work. And when they saw that Steve could do 52, they stole them, and they said, hey, you know, you've been doing that thing weekly. How would you like to do it 3 times a month instead? Come over and do Spider-Man. And they were looking for a team to put together where they specifically didn't want an alpha dog. They didn't want someone who was going to take over the room. They wanted like 4 guys that could work like a team, like a relay race, that all had a similar vibe, a similar feel, and that would all work together to produce this 3 times a month comic. And I was one of the first names thrown out because they went, he's really good in the room. He'd work well in that scenario. So I was specifically brought in not to be an alpha dog. So there's no other way I could have like worked my way into Spider-Man, because what happened was, it's a grind doing that thing, because even when you're not doing the 3 comics a month, you're on a million email chains, you're on all these Google flowchart things, you're on phone calls with everyone all the time. So you're all making sure that all the subplots line up, that you're helping everyone else out with the stories. It's so much extra work than just writing your own book. Mm-hmm. And what we were finding was that like the other 3 writers were getting more and more burned out. Well, all of us were getting burned out, but there was no fucking way I was getting off of Spider-Man. So when the first 3 guys fell to the side, they brought in 3 new guys who were so like all of Brand New Day, there's 2 different teams. One was called the Brain Trust, and the other was called the Webheads, and I was the one guy that went through all because I was like, I'm on, man. I'm doing Spider-Man. And when they decided to end that experiment, because it was a grind and gears were smoking and people were like, ugh. I assumed they were just gonna throw it aside and bring in a whole new fresh team of 1 writer. And I knew they were going to have 1 writer do it twice a month, and that there would be a sister book, which would be like Marvel Team Up, that was going to be called Avenging Spider-Man. So I had a lunch with Steve where I was making him a big pitch, because I assumed when Brand New Day was over, I was out. So I was making a pitch for the Team Up book like that was my lifeboat, so I could keep writing Spider-Man. And I pitched it to Steve, and he went, I don't want you on Avenging Spider-Man. I was like, fuck, I thought it was over. I thought it was done. He went, no, I want you on the lead book. And I was like,
awesome.
Yeah. And he made one caveat. He said, I was doing Mighty Avengers at the time. He said, you have to walk away from Mighty Avengers. If you're doing this, this is your job. You are the Spider-Man guy. There is nothing else.
Was that hard?
I told him I had to think about it. And so we left the restaurant. He started walking up to Marvel, and I started walking back home. And I got on my cell phone. I called my pop. And I was like, Dad, what should I do? And he went, what do you mean, what should you do? Like, I told him the setup. And he went, like, all your life you wanted to write Spider-Man. What are you thinking? And I was like, oh, my God. Like, I hung up on my dad, and I call up Steve Wacker. And I'm like, he hadn't got back to Marvel yet. I'm like, I'll do it.
All right, real quick, guys, in the chat, a few things. Hold your questions, hold your super chats, talk amongst yourself. That's really cool. There's no need for a mod. You guys can say whatever you want, because Dan can't see you, so it doesn't matter. Okay. A lot of people are saying we need a mod in here, and
but if you can see me,
it seems like 75% of everyone's being really cool.
Apple, it's refreshing.
There's a little commercial there. But yeah, so we will have a Q&A question moment after this, and you'll all get to ask questions, but I can't ask Dan questions in the middle of this. Okay, so anyway.
I'm a Cancer, a Moonchild.
I don't know. They all have political questions. So.
Oh God, no. This is how we talk, is that we talk by not talking about politics.
Well, and why would we? We know. It's like, how boring are politics anyway? I know how you feel. I've heard it from other people. It's like half of the country feels your way, half of the country feels my way. It's not.
Well, I would say 33%, but.
Well, actually, if you average it out, I think if you this many people, which is an election, it's a pretty good.
I shouldn't have pulled that thread.
51 over here, 49 over there. All right, so.
Oh my God, I'm dying.
Are you guys happy now in the chat? All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, moving on. So now let's get to Silver Surfer, because you've done Spider-Man. We want to talk about Surfer. We want to talk about issue number 12. I'm getting mine out. We're going to do this kind of like story time. All right. I just want you to tell the people in the chat a story.
Oh, well, okay. One of the fun things about working on Surfer is, one, I love the character. And two, you know, everyone knows by now that I'm a huge fan of Doctor Who. And when I never intended to pitch, here's this like Doctor Who inspired Silver Surfer. It just kind of happened. We had a summit where one of the goals in the summit was to expand the cosmic character line of Marvel Comics. Like, let's do more cosmic titles. And on the agenda, the #1 bullet point was, let's do a new Silver Surfer title. We haven't done one in a while. And I knew that with my Spider-Man commitments, I couldn't handle another book. I'm very slow. I write 2 issues a month usually and change. So I can usually pull off like 30 comics a year. You know, so that's usually not enough to do 3 books. So I wasn't pitching for Surfer, but I loved the character. And by the end of that retreat, they hadn't settled on a Surfer. No one liked any of the pitches. And I was talking with Brevoort. We were like doing a post-mortem on the retreat together. Like, how do you think that went? How do you think that went? And when we started talking about the Surfer pitches, he said to me, if you were writing Surfer, how would you do it? And I thought we were just bullshitting. And I was like, I would reboot it like the way Russell T Davies rebooted Doctor Who. Like, he's this lone character. He's so alien. You need to put a human in the book. You need supporting cast. So you put a human on the board with them, and they see the world through human eyes, and they humanize the Surfer. It kind of like, but the other thing I was saying, it was kind of like adding Rick Jones to the Captain Marvel book. You know, so that's the way I pitched it. And then Brevoort went, you know, I pulled Mark Waid aside during one of the breaks and said, you should pitch this book like this. I'm like, we were like totally thinking the same thing. And I went, wow, okay, what would you do as the editor? And Tom, I would do this. And I went, oh, if you did that, you could do this. And we just started playing. And we ended up talking for 3 hours about a book that I wasn't writing and he wasn't editing. And he suddenly went dead silent on the phone. And I went, what? He goes, write it up. And I go, what do you mean write it up? He's like, I want to edit that book, write it up. And I'm like, I have no, when would I do this? I'm doing Spider-Man. And he goes, you'll find a way. So cool. That's how the Surfer happened. But in that initial talk and in the initial pitch, there were 3 stories I wanted to hit throughout the entire run of Surfer. I wanted to have all these adventures along the way, but there were 3 big stories we wanted to do. And one was we were going to keep, because it was going to be Surfer and his human friend, his human companion. And we were going to hide from the fact from that person. We were going to, because like, you know, like you can go through your life and you don't know everything about everyone else in the world. You don't know the history of what's going on now in Iran or, you know, Bangladesh or whatever. We can live on a planet and we can not understand everything. So I totally buy that there's someone on Earth who doesn't know who the Surfer is and doesn't know what Galactus is. You know, the same way, like, I don't keep up with sports. You know, so we all have holes in our knowledge. So I was like, okay, I can buy that there's a person. And if they didn't know, and you're suddenly traveling through space with your space friend, what happens on the day when you find out what Galactus is and who he is, and how does that change your feeling about him? Mm-hmm. Like, here you've been having all these fun adventures with him, and now you're the cause of billions of people dying. Mm-hmm. Do I want to travel through space with you anymore? Do I like you anymore? That was going to be one big story on the story where the day they found out about Galactus, and that was going to be our first big Galactus story, because then you get to see how Surfer interacts with Galactus and blah, 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 blah. So we knew we had that story. We had a story we were going to have a big bad in the book, and the big bad was going to end up being the people of Zenla. Hmm. And what they were doing was kind of evil. Like, they were being conquistadors, and they were going through space, and they were changing every planet into Zenlavian culture. That you found out, like, originally Zenlavians were isolationists on their own planet, and they never traveled anywhere, which is where Silver Surfer kind of got his wanderlust. Like he wanted to go out and see things, and he couldn't because he was on this isolationist planet. We were going to give you this secret that there was a reason they were isolationists. And it wasn't because they wanted to see the rest of the universe. It was going to be because they had elders who knew that if they got out into the universe, they were so superior to everyone, they were going to inflict their culture on every race, like a virus. So you do this story where they're the secret bad guys, and they're about at the point where they're going to reach Earth, and they're going to convert Earth into a new Zen law. So you'd put Silver Surfer in a situation where he goes, no, I stand with Earth. What you're doing is wrong. We knew we wanted to hit that story. And the third story we wanted to hit in the whole tapestry of the whole run of Surfer. And anyone who's read my Superior Spider-Man knows, like, I love playing long games and paying off things over time. The third story we really wanted to do was every time the human would go away from Earth with the Surfer, every time they'd come home, they'd pick up their life where they left off, and their life would have changed. That things would have moved on, like we sold your house and we moved on to another place, or all your friends moved away, or that life was going to happen while you weren't there. So there's a price you pay for going off into space and having these amazing adventures with Silver Surfer. When you come home, everything's moved forward without you. And there's going to be
it's just because of the fact that you've been gone, or is it some kind of theory of relativity, like, or is it alternate reality? What do you mean?
No, just like when you leave, if you Ethan packed your bags and you moved to India, you know,
things would be different. So it's just a matter of being gone, right?
It's gone, and life changes when you're not there, and you make sacrifices. Are you spending time with your family, or are you often having these adventures?
Mm-hmm.
So we were going to do this story where we knew that Dawn was going to go to Earth, and when the first time she comes home, her sister's pregnant, and she missed the wedding, and she never even met the husband, and oh my God, you're pregnant. You know, like, you're my family, and I love you, and I've missed out on all this stuff. But she still wants to go off into space, and she promises to make it back home in time for the birth of her niece or nephew. So we did this story in issue 11, where, because they're twins, she suddenly gets this feeling, oh my God, Surfer, how long have we been off in space? And he starts telling her, like, oh my God, we're going to miss the birth of my sister's baby. So all of issue 11 is they're racing home because she doesn't want to miss the birth of her baby, of her niece or nephew. And there's this character, he used to be called Warrior 1. There's this Planet Prime, where everyone on Planet Prime is dedicated themselves to one discipline and become the best of that. You know, like you would be Penciler Prime, and you would be the best penciler on the planet. Exactly. And, you know, there's Dancer 1. There's, you know, Street Cleaner 1. There's you work really hard to get a 1.
Right.
And there are some 2s and 3s in case 1s get sick. But your desire is to be a 1, and he was Warrior 1. And by the end of his story, Surfer, by defeating him and the way he defeated him, he lost his rank and he became Warrior 0. He didn't even become 2 or 3. So he forever is like, if I ever find Surfer, I'm going to destroy him. So they're just trying to get home to get to see the birth of her sister's baby. And this son of a bitch keeps tracking them through space and like, fight me, fight me. They're like, ah. And when they finally defeat him and they get to go home, Dawn is so upset because she gets home and what? Oh, you had the baby. Oh no, you had the baby. But she's talking a mile a minute, not letting anyone talk. And she's not noticing that everyone's dressed in black. And they're saying like, oh, what'd you name her? Oh my God. And they're all just trying to tell her something. And the whole time she was just, and we even see this cosmic weird character who's been spying on them, who they can't see, who earlier had said, if you don't get home now, she'll never forgive you. Like you have to, but they're like a silent, omniscient narrator. But the whole time they're like, oh, well, where's this? And then the last page, everyone's trying to talk to her, and all she's talking about the baby. She suddenly goes, where's Dad?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
there's the bad news, right?
Yeah, and we just left it hanging. And you, the reader, know she was off in space so long that one of her favorite people in her whole life, her father, is dead, and she missed her father dying, not just the baby being born. So we always knew we were going to get to that. In my reading classes, we always knew that we were going to get to that story. That was the third story I wanted to tell, was Dawn coming back home, finding out she'd missed her father passing away. And in their adventures, and this is really weird because before we'd even written one story, we knew we were doing this issue where Surfer and Dawn were going to end up on this pleasure planet where when you're on the planet, it just makes you feel you don't have any cares, you don't have any worries. The planet's kind of like medicated. And it was very much a honey trap planet. And Surfer, he had all these refugees of Galactus planets, like all the sole survivors of every planet Galactus had ever eaten. He had promised to find them a new homeland. And he was leading this as their shepherd, leading them through space to find them a new paradise. And they ended up on this planet, and they didn't realize it was a trap. And we did this whole story. And by the end of that story, you find out that the planet's actually kind of benevolent, and it's helping all these people get over their trauma. It's like a form of therapy. And they all decide to stay, and Surfer and Dawn leave. So we knew that planet existed. And what we were always going to do is build to the story where she finds out that her father passes away, and to deal with it, she asks Surfer to bring her back to that planet. And the whole question is, will she ever leave that planet? Will she ever get over it? Will the planet, by being a honey trap, just take away that pain? And would you just stay there forever? Like, if you're ever in this point of your life of grief, would it be easier to turn away and just not deal with it?
This is the kind of stuff, these are the kind of deep human emotions and feelings and problems that you need to explore if you're going to be a writer of any note, because most people think it's just writing situations, like action situations. But these characters are very real to you, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. There's Lawrence Block, who writes like the burglar books. He had this weird analogy of, as a writer, you're like on a raft and you're going down a river, and every time you tell a story, every time you're burning part of the raft. So as you have to keep experiencing more life, but you have to kind of write from what you know. You have to use your own life as fuel. So it's, the world of Surfer, the house, the Greenwood Inn that they live in, that's my grandma's house. My sisters are identical twins that I grew up with my whole life, and Dawn has her twin sister, Eve. And I never intended to be the dad. We had the dad character, and
he looks like you.
He does, because I don't think he started out looking like me in the first issue. Yeah, but over time, Mike Allred started morphing him into me.
He did that on purpose.
He totally did that on purpose. And I'm like, and Mike didn't know where some of the stories were going. And I knew that, in issue 11, I was going to kill Reg Greenwood. I knew that from the beginning. And I'm thinking like, oh God, I've got to kill myself now. And then in issue 12, there's a point where I knew that the planet was going to take on, because in order to help Dawn deal with her grief, the planet can take on many different forms. And one of the forms it takes on to help her deal with it is it becomes a version of her father. So she gets to have this person she can talk to and hang out with, and it's all part of her therapy. And Surfer and the aliens that are their friends are regulating how much time a day she spends with this surrogate father. That they're slowly.
Is that really good therapy to have a cabbage become some kind of simulacrum of your father to
It
so that you don't have to deal with the loss.
That's the story. It's that
Yeah.
the story takes place in two time frames. We have Dawn on the planet Euphoria, and we symbolize that with the white gutters. And then when we go back in time, we have the black gutters, reminiscent of that last panel of issue 11, where that's where she's on Earth in the past, in the recent past, dealing with her father's death. And it just becomes too much to bear. We keep flipping back and forth to find out, here she is in the present on Euphoria, and how did you get there? And basically, she says to the surfer, this is what I want, do this for me. Take me here. And it's all about him trying to realize, he's going, it's his friend, and this is what she's asking for. And he loves her very much. But at what point is it bad? At what point is it hurtful? At what point are they going to stop this? Yeah. And he's weaning her off in time. One of the things I really loved about issue 12 is,
what do you think about that, though, Dan? I'm sorry. What do you think about the idea of being able to choose the moment? Like, let's say, someone that you love died, and you were able to delay the pain of that until you were ready to fully embrace it. And in the meantime, you could have a fake version, you know what I mean, of whoever it is in your life. And then at some point, somebody is going to take this away from you when you're ready.
Is
that good or bad?
That's the science fiction of it. That's the fantasy of it. But on some level, that's something we can all feel. Like, what if we could make that wish? What if we could have one more day with our loved one? What if it could be a week? What if it could be a month? What if it could be a year? And
would you ever let go?
Would you ever let go? That's kind of what issue 12 is about. And also in macrocosm, it was so nice that we got the 2 extra issues to wrap up Surfer, because we could tell a fuller story. Where issue 12 is Dawn dealing with the grief of losing her father, and Surfer being the person helping her through that. And issue 13 was the rest of Dawn's life. And by the end of it, she passes away.
As an old woman?
As an old woman. They have a science fiction adventure where they end up in the universe before ours. They end up in the universe where Galactus comes from. So Norrin gets to interact with Galen of Ta, the man who will become Galactus before he became Galactus.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're stuck in Ta until Ta explodes, until Ta dies. But they have decades and decades and decades on Ta. And what happens is they get to live out Dawn's life, and they get to be an old couple together. So she has a full, rich life exploring the universe before ours with Norrin.
Does Norrin understand human emotions? Does he know what it is how does he understand and relate to Dawn, who is a human being?
Yeah.
How does he understand and relate to her? Isn't he aloof to her in some way?
That's been the fun of the long journey of Surfer, of the 29 issues of Surfer, where from the minute they finish their first adventure together as a pair, there's some magic there, there's some alchemy, there's some chemistry that they work together, where the first ever, the way they meet is there's this cosmic celestial palace in space, the size of like 20 planets, called the Empiricon. And it's the most amazing destination in the universe, and it has a terrible secret. And because of that terrible secret, this giant entity called the Never Queen is on a path to destroy it. So the Empiricon, they have the greatest science ever. That's the most, anything you could imagine is on the Empiricon. They have, in order to stop the Never Queen, they use this device called the Motivator. And they find a champion. It could be anyone. It could be a Thor, it could be, Captain Marvel. It could be anybody. They find a cosmic champion who might be able to stop the Never Queen. And they use the Motivator cube to scan them and to pull out from all of time and space the one person who's the most important person in the universe to them, and then hold them hostage. And they say, you have to stop the Never Queen or we will destroy your most important person. So they've been doing that, and every champion they've sent off to fight the Never Queen has been destroyed. And then finally they get the Surfer, and they scan him with the motivator, and they scan through all the time and space, and this woman appears in the cube, and it's Dawn Greenwood. And Surfer goes, I have no idea who that is. Because they plucked it from the future. He's like, he has this moment where he goes, is it Alicia Masters? Is it Shalabal? Is it like who? Show me who. And it's this woman. He goes, I have no idea who that is. And that's how they end the first issue. And she can't see him. She's like in the motivator cube in a hidden location. She doesn't. And issue 2 is all about her, even though she's been abducted into space from her hometown, where she's literally the abducted human. She's so resourceful that she doesn't just break out of the motivator cube. She breaks all the motivator cubes open, and she's going to lead everyone to freedom. Wow. So by the time Surfer pulls a betrayal on them, isn't going to fight the Never Queen, he's heading to the Empiricon to save this human, because she is his responsibility. She would not be, he doesn't care. He doesn't know who she is. He doesn't care. All he knows is, you're there, and you're there because of me. I must be your champion and save you. And he goes there hoping just to free one Earthling. And instead, she's flummoxed it because she saved everybody, and it's a whole freedom thing. It's like, I was just here to save you. Like, shouldn't we save everybody? Like, oh. So she already flustered him by being so proactive and she's a great character. And then you do this beat where by the end of the story, they freed everybody and they're sending everybody home. And he is like, I'm honor bound. You got abducted all the way from Earth. I will return you to Earth. And as they send all the aliens away, and he's dealt with this crazy woman who's flummoxed him time and again, even in the short time they're together. She says to him, like, oh, so it's just you, me, and Toomey. And he goes, is that one of the refugees? Did one of them get left behind? Or, he's like, they're like the hostages? And she's like, no, you're bored. You're like, you named my board Toomey. No, you did. You said Toomey, my board.
God.
And Surfer laughs. And he hasn't laughed. And that's the whole thing. Dawn is this person who gets him to laugh and to do things that are very human, that she's slowly cracking through that shell throughout the whole series. He's becoming more and more of a human, just being in her presence, dealing with her, and the two of them dealing with each other as friends and as companions and adventurers. And it's what the biggest trick we pull in the course of the 29 issues of Surfer is we trick you into thinking it's a Kirby pop art pastiche, or it's a take on Doctor Who in the Marvel Universe. No, it's none of those. We've tricked you into reading a romance book. It's a romance book.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I just want to tell the chat, this is exactly how writers and artists talk in comics. Right now, I am pretending as though I were going to have Mike Allred's job. Yeah, fat chance. But the way it works is a writer will be will have a story time, and he will tell you, because the writer this is all stuff that comes straight from his heart. It's in his head. He's been thinking about this for a long time, and my job is basically to listen, absorb, and see what comes to mind. Like, I'm feeling what Dan's saying, and I'm creating visual images and feelings. I'm thinking in terms of colors and shapes and moments, and it is, I can't even tell you, like, this is something I hope you guys understand and appreciate. If you want to be a comic book artist one day, if you want to be a comic book writer one day, you're going to collaborate with another creative person, and it's going to go a lot like this, ideally.
This is like every conversation Mike and I have, and Laura, and the biggest, prize of doing Surfer was getting to be an honorary Allred, who's being welcomed into this clan. There's these seeds that we set throughout the entire run that have slow burns, and some of them have eventual payoffs. And one of them was, and we knew it from day one, because I had the overarch all set up. I didn't know how many stories, like an accordion, how many stories they were going to have along the way, but I had the tent poles. I knew the Galactus story. I knew the Zenla story. I knew where her father died. And then how many little stories can we tell on the way, and how can we build the bridges emotionally to get these characters where we need them to be? One of the things that we had was Surfer had an expression that he said all the time. And we seeded it, and we kept paying off on it, which is, you know, Dawn would ask him, like, how is something like that possible? Or where are we going to now? Or blah, 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 blah. And he'd go, the universe is infinite and ever expanding.
Yeah.
Which is a nonsensical thing to say, but we had the solution the whole time, where he kept saying the universe, she would say, like, wait, a planet with cotton candy trees? This doesn't make any sense. Dawn, the universe is infinite and ever expanding. Everything's out there. Like, he kept saying this over and over again. Well, you have this scene on issue 12 where this dialogue was up on this whiteboard for over 3 years. You know, it was this exchange, and we finally got to pay it off in issue 12, where there's this very wise Yoda woman named Mama Hub, who's one of the Galactus refugees who now lives on the pleasure planet of Euphoria. And you are going to have this beat where Dawn, even though she'd been on this planet and dealing with the grief of her father, she was, even though the planet makes you happy, one night she wakes up and she's crying and she doesn't know why. Mm-hmm. Like, even on the happiest planet in the world, you're going to have to confront your grief. And meanwhile, there is a sequence with the Surfer where he doesn't know when Dawn's ever going to break through. And in their previous adventure, he had silvered down and he had succumbed to the pleasure planet. He'd actually, so he was trapped there too. And it wasn't until something happened where he silvered up where he realized, oh my God, I've been a prisoner. So the whole time Dawn is going through this, he is staying silvered up so he won't succumb to the planet. Now, if you know Surfer, there's two things he doesn't want to be in life. He doesn't want to be someone's slave. He doesn't want to be a herald. That is the greatest offense to him. That was the thing. He finally had to betray his master and break his shackles and be free. He never wants to be a slave to another. That is his greatest fear. And his other greatest fear is, for that betrayal, Galactus put the Great Barrier around Earth, and he was trapped on Earth for 10 years. And all he wanted to do was soar through the skies, and he was trapped on Earth. So the two things he doesn't want to be, and we hit it over and over again in this book. He hates it every time they have to go back to Earth. He's been there. He's done that. He's watched that show 1,000,000 times. Yeah. He knows everything there is to know about fucking Earth. He doesn't want to go back. That he doesn't want to be a slave, and he doesn't want to be a prisoner to a planet. He doesn't want to be a slave, and he doesn't want to be a prisoner. So we had those two beats. You have this. So Dawn wakes up, and she's all flustered. And Mama Hub takes her up to this hilltop and goes, like, we'll have girl time. Let's talk. You know, we'll work this through. And Mama Hub says to Dawn, feeling better, dear? And she goes, I'm on Euphoria. It's impossible not to feel better here. I just wish. She goes, what, Dawn? It's okay. You can tell me anything. I just wish the universe made sense. It does. Trust me, I'm Mama Hub. I know all its secrets. All right, explain this. There's this thing the Surfer always says, the universe is infinite and ever expanding. Well, which is it? It can't be both. Just why not? And meanwhile, down here, Euphoria feels Dawn's pain when she woke up and she was all crying and wants to become her father and ease that pain. And Dawn's now gone a couple weeks without seeing the father at all. And Surfer's like, this is a setback. I can't let you go to Dawn. So he is fighting to stop Euphoria from going up that hill and easing Dawn's pain. He knows what Dawn, and he can't even let her hear the battle. So he's used his power cosmic to still all the molecules, so even sound won't travel. So their fight is completely silent. So while so that's all going along to the bottom of the page while Don's having these moments. He's having the struggle of his life, fighting the will of a planet.
Jeez.
That just wants to make her happy. That just wants her not to feel pain. And she goes, and Mama Hub, she's just like, you know, why can't it be both? And she goes, that's the nature of space. It's like a parent's love for their child. Before you're born, your parents' love for you is infinite. And from the moment you enter the world, their love for you expands. It grows every day. And Dawn says, that's how I feel about my dad. And Mama Hub says, no, dear. A child's love for their parent, that's the nature of time. It is both ageless and never-ending. The love you have for them, it was there from the moment you began. And even when they are no longer with you, your love for them goes on and on. This dialogue was up here for 3 years because I knew we were getting there. And she goes, their love, your love, they're with you always and forever. You feel that? She goes, yes, it hurts right now, but it's a hurt you're lucky to have. Mm-hmm. And someday, if you're very lucky, you'll know the greatest secret, a shared love that is both infinite, never expanding, and ageless and never ending. And they will be your space and your time. They will be your universe. And right then, the surfer defeats the planet and it blows it up in a bit of dust, its avatar, and it starts walking up the hill. But we don't know. Originally, I wrote it where we didn't know who won, and you see the figure coming through the dust, but it was kind of too hard to pull off.
Look at the acting that.
Oh, Mike is gorgeous.
Yeah, Mike Allred's acting. I mean, this woman, the old mother, is hideous, except she's not. She's sweet and warm, and you want to give her a hug. And look at Dawn going through this. Look at her listening and feeling comforted, and then finally smiling through her tears. When this is just, you know.
Surfer comes through the dust, and he goes, "Did you hear that? Any of it?" It's like he's so worried she heard her father's voice or heard the fight. And he goes, please, I have to know. Are you all right? She goes, yeah, for the first time in a long time. And she goes, you were ready to wait for me here forever. I would not leave you, Dawn Greenwood. Norrin Rad, I know you. There are two things you never want to be, bound to another or imprisoned on a planet. And you are ready to be both for me. Norrin, I'm ready to go now. And that was always going to be our end for issue 12, is that, but with the added beat where the whole time he's been on that planet, he hasn't silvered down. It's been like the longest time he hasn't silvered down in the book.
Will you look at how great Mike Allred is again? I'm sorry.
Oh no, he's working with him has been like the highlight of my life.
Okay, watch this. Now see how Surfer is twisting this way, like this, coiling around. The tree is following that coil around back to her, and she's coming back the other way. And right in the middle of that, this is a circle. They're making a circle, and then with the tree, and then she's right in the middle, just observing it all.
It's lovely.
Hats off.
Yeah, no, just every page was golden. There was stuff we did in this run where if I had nowadays the idea of a creative team.
Telling me to shut up every time I talk. I'm sorry, in the chat. They're like, Ethan, no offense. Shut up and let Dan talk. And it's making me laugh. When you think about it, it's absurd that like Mike and I did 29 issues together. And one of them was like, and a 10-page short story. And one of them was like a 31-page issue. We did like over 600 pages together as one creative team with me and Mike and Laura all together, working together as this unit. You don't see that anymore. So every now and then, you know, this book would be late a lot, and that would always be my fault because Marvel needs the revenue for Spider-Man more than Silver Surfer. So whenever there is a push comes to shove, which book's going to be late, it was always Surfer. So that was always on me. But people would
this was like 3 or 4 years where it was just one creative team, one voice, one vision. And because of that, we were able to pull off a trick in issue 13 that we never could have pulled off if it wasn't us, which was we had a time loop. And this is, I love the numerology of this. This is volume 2, issue 13. In volume 1, issue 13, they decide to go back in time. And when they go back in time, they run into a future Dawn and a future Surfer. And when we got to volume 213, they go back in time. And Marvel Comics now are 20 pages an issue. This issue ran 21 because we lifted the exact same page, the file, the coloring, the lettering, everything. This page is from Silver Surfer 13, Volume 1 and Volume 2. It's the exact same page.
That's cool.
And we slotted it in between here and there, and it fits in like a puzzle piece. And now you're reading it from the point of view of future Surfer instead of past Surfer. And we imagine a world where you did that. There was no other way to do it. It was the exact same artist, and Mike's art has stayed tight all this time. It flows perfectly. I love that. That's like one of my favorite things of the run is that we have the same page twice, and we didn't like have them redraw it. We didn't do a different angle, and because of that, Marvel didn't have to change the P&L for that book. So we were able to do a 21-page issue because it's like running a house ad.
Well, I mean, everyone, Silver Surfer, it ran 14 issues. This is issue 12. This is special. This actually, I mean, for a parent, I mean, that dialogue kind of made me a little bit weepy, but also, you know, as a child who has parents, that kind of dialogue made me a little weepy. That was really, really great stuff, Dan.
It's, you know, there are times where you're working on stuff and you're so invested in it and you're so in the zone of telling the story where you're like, issue 12 and 13, writing them, I was like in tears,
Yeah.
just sitting at the keyboard, you know, or stuff like Amazing 600. There's like the wedding of Aunt May and Jay.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bit where Peter Parker goes in to check May before she's about to get married. She's putting her makeup on and getting ready and she's nervous. And he goes in to give her a talk, and she turns around being Aunt May and she gives him a talk. And the talk she basically gives him is that it's okay to be happy. You know, you think of Peter Parker, you know, kicking a can, or Peter Parker walking away from the trash can, or, you know, always grousing about not being able to pay the rent or whatever. Aunt May tells him good things happen too. Like, look at this relationship I just had, this whirlwind romance, which is now a wedding. You know, Uncle Ben would be happy about this. You know, it's okay. And she tells him it's your responsibility, that there's this, you know, there are these, to find this happiness and to have it. You know, she flips the responsibility speech that, you know, if you're going to go through life, you disrespect a moment if there's this happy moment and you don't let it in. And she gives him this speech, and at the end of the speech, because she tells him there's a power in every moment and it's your responsibility to blah, blah. But at the end of the speech, she asks him, you know, do you understand, son? And he goes, yes, Mom. And she calls him son, and he calls her Mom.
That's nice.
And I was writing this, and I was just like,
that's really nice.
Yeah. So you're like, yeah. There are times when, like, yeah, and the last issues of that, or like, but there's also the moments where, like, I'm writing it and, you know, there's like the devil on my shoulder, you know, where I'm doing something horrible to Peter Parker, and I'm just like, oh, this is terrible. Oh, I'm ratcheting it up to 11. Oh, I'm doing this terrible, terrible thing to him. And I know you're going to be reading it at home going, no. You know,
good job. You got to put them through hell. You got to put these characters through hell.
It's the worst, but it's also the best, because, you know, it shows you care. You know, if I get you that freaked out over a character, if I get you that passionate about a character, that sad about a character, that happy about a character, then that's the journey you want. It's weird. I ran this quote from Alan Moore not that long ago on my Twitter because there's this need when you're a fan, you want to reach out, and you want Charlie Brown to kick the football. But that's not a good story. Charlie Brown kicking the football isn't a good story. Lucy pulling it away again is a great story. Like I'm pretty sure, like Schultz, like on one of his final issues, people are like, "Are you going to let him kick the football?" And he was like, "No," because that's Charlie Brown. And I'm not. People go like, "Oh, you're comparing Peter Parker to Charlie Brown." I'm like, oh my God, there's so many pitfalls when talking about comics.
Kind of, though. I mean, kind of.
There are creators and there are major creators of Spider-Man who have made that analogy. But dear God help you if you're the one who says it in the present, in the age of social media. But there's this Alan Moore quote, and I ran it recently, and it's all about, you don't get to vote if you're in the audience. You don't get to, this isn't choose your own adventure. It's not about like, oh my God, I want Peter to kiss that girl. I want Charlie Brown to kick the football. I want the thing I want. Why aren't you giving me the thing I want?
Keep wanting. That's not what you're here for.
It's not about the want. It's about the need. And when you say that, people go like, oh, you're so arrogant. You're telling me what I need. And you're like, no, dude, like Ethan and I, and writers and artists, we better have that feeling. We better be that passionate. We better be that involved that we know what the story needs. We know what the audience needs, that we're playing it right. And it's playing with what you want, not giving you what you want, playing with what you want, which is going to create the biggest feeling. But, then the flip side is you can't do it for a gimmick. You can't do it, just because you can. You're doing it because you have a story and a vision and a thing you want to do. It's frustrating that we live in this day and age of social media where, you're saying something now in 280 characters, but you're saying, you're saying things in sound bites, or you're putting up an image, or you're putting up this, and it leads everybody to have their Rorschach test version of it. I said something about how there's an infinite, there's no finite amount of comics that come out every month, and I'm seeing like weird snarky responses of, oh, do you have an infinite comic book store? And the answer to that is yes, you do. It's called the internet. You have this tool right here. You have this tool if you want to tell comics, if you want to tell stories. No one can stop you from putting your art up online. No one can stop you from, oh my God, we're in a day and age where, everyone used to worry, how am I going to get an editor to see my story? How am I going to get an editor to see my artwork?
That's over with now. You can go right to the audience.
Boom! This is it. You build a Tumblr, make a blog, do a thing. And you know what? It's very field of dreams. Build it, they'll come. If you do something that is so freaking awesome,
they're going to come. They'll want to read it. Look at Robert Kirkman in The Walking Dead. From nowhere.
Yeah, you have the ability. People get discovered now, way more than a portfolio at a comic convention than this thing you've done online. The important thing is you watermark the fuck out of it. Because there are so many art thieves. They're online. There are so many people that'll just lift it and stick it on their Tumblr or erase your name. I don't understand these people, but watermark the hell out of your stuff. But get it out there, and people will find it, and people will see it.
And that's how to get. I mean, the people say, what's the best way to get into comics? I mean, you should be doing comics and trying to get eyes on them. And that's, you've got the internet. That is the best way possible. We didn't have that growing up. We did have to go and talk to editors. It's over with now.
And pros are doing this. Like, you ever been to Panel Syndicate?
Mm-mm.
Oh my God, everyone go to Panel Syndicate. It is Brian K. Vaughan's digital comic portal. And he's doing comics there that there is no print comic. And you go to panelsyndicate.com, and it's very much like an indie rock band. There's a tip jar. You know, you pay what you want, and then you get that comic. And they're going to hope that you will support it if it's good. So, like, there's a couple of them out now. But if you ever get a chance, go there. And Marcos Martin, who I love, Marcos Martin is one of those artists where if I could, I would chain him in my basement and he would just draw comics for me all the time. He's so good. He did the No One Dies story with me in Amazing Spider-Man. I have a pact with Marcos Martin that we made very early on in when I was doing Spider-Man comics with him in the Brand New Day era. And then he came over and he did some of the Big Time. And I think it was around Big Time when I was doing the solo run, early in the beginning of the Big Time run. I made a pact with him where, because he was saying he was going to go away, like he was kind of getting burnt out on Spider-Man. I said, will you, if I ever leave Spider-Man, will you come and draw my last story? And yeah, and he was like, I will do that. I will come and draw your last story. And that story was written ages ago, and it was in a drawer.
He's sitting on that right now. You have the last story, and for Spider-Man,
he has not drawn it, but he has it. He has it in his hands. And
oh, he actually has it, and he's supposed to be working on it, and he's not.
No, he will. He will. Yeah, I'm not listening. But he has the thing that will one day be my last Spider-Man story.
Thank you so much for going over your comics and your heart and everything, and putting it all out there for the fans. I have to say, this is the way to do this, honestly. Interacting with fans directly, speaking to them. Again, this is something that the internet is good for, but it also, you know, if you do it the right way, I think it also kind of dehumanizes people and makes people act their worst. And this, to me, just seems like the very, very best interaction that you could possibly have with fans. And a lot of people are grateful that you came out and did this tonight.
But go to Panel Syndicate and read the Brian K. Vaughan, Marcos Martin story, The Private Eye.
You're not saying goodnight yet.
It is amazing.
Questions. People have been waiting for this.
Let's do questions. But yeah, if you go to Panel Syndicate, the entirety of Private Eye, it is a mini series, is up there, and you can read it on your screen. But you could do that at home. You can make a book like that. But oh my God, it's gorgeous. Anyway.
So somebody left early. He said he was in great pain and he wanted to leave, but he insisted. He said, please ask Dan, is Hobgoblin coming back? And he'll check it out tomorrow. He'll watch the repeat of it.
If you mean Phil Urich, that Hobgoblin, maybe. The other Hobgoblin is appearing as part of the Sinister Six in the Miles Morales book.
It's a good question.
Written by Brian Michael Bendis.
Nice. Yeah. Comic Enthusiast says, Dan, what DC character would you want to write?
Oh, man. Well, I've been at DC, and I did Arkham Asylum Living Hell and Justice League Classified with all the core Justice League and Batman Adventures, Superman Adventures, Justice League Adventures. So I got a lot of things out of my system. But like everybody, you know, Superman and Batman are the big guys. Batman and Superman, Superman, Batman, and all the characters in their respective families. But I have this mad love for DC. I love the Marvel family, especially if you old school it with Mr. Takitani. Yeah, like just going all CC Beck on it. Oh my God, the Arnold Drake Premiani Doom Patrol, the Silver Age Doom Patrol. Oh, that I love that. I've got a take I've always wanted to do on the Creeper, a take I've always wanted to do on Dead Man. I love all the Fourth World. I love DC. I would love to do DC stuff, but I'm a Marvel guy, and they've been very good to me, and I get to write the greatest character in all of fiction, who is Spider-Man.
You're going to be there for a while. Captain Frugal asks, what is the most challenging character that you have ever written?
Oh boy. I love Thor. I love reading runs of Thor. I love everything Jason Aaron's doing on Thor. I am like, oh my God, I read the Walt Simonson run. I read that, at least once a year. I love Thor, but I know he's not in my wheelhouse. I can fake Thor. I can do Thor for small sprints. Like I can have him in a team book, like being character number 5. But
what is it that's hard? The Norse dialogue, or just the character himself?
It's very much the presence of the. I can do Hercules. I can do drunk Thor. To me, Hercules is drunk Thor, and drunk Thor is funny. I love writing Hercules. Something about Thor, I know I don't connect well with him. And over on DC, I would never want to write the Atom. I can write Hank Pym because Hank Pym deals with fake Marvel science. I can, I know how vibranium works. But if you write a good Ray Palmer story, you better understand real science and real physics. And dear God, that was all the stuff in high school and college I fell asleep during.
And be prepared to bore people. What kind of superhero shrinks? Whose power fantasy is to get smaller? I never understood either of those characters.
Oh, I totally get the fun of the size changing superhero. I had so much fun writing Hank Pym in Mighty Avengers, but I know the real science of Ray Palmer would drive me batty.
All right, this is a question I don't understand. Is Shalabal salvageable?
Yeah, because we made Shalabal a baddie. And Dawn Greenwood is kind of set up to be the long-term romance throughout the book. But the nice thing about the Dawn Greenwood story is it's over. She has her full life and it's over. Can Shalabal reappear in Surfer's life? Yeah, but now there's a new wrinkle to it. I wouldn't bat an eye if someone if the next Silver Surfer writer brought back Shalabal in a heroic way and she and Surfer are together. Any character created by Stan and Steve and Jack and any of the classic characters, they're unbreakable. Anytime a fan goes, oh, they're destroyed forever. No, they're not. These characters are built strong. You can do anything you want to them and they will bounce back. No character is ever destroyed forever. It just takes that next writer to have a big idea or to
Hal Jordan.
Hal Jordan
was broken.
Yeah, there's no character that's ever broken that can't be fixed, quote unquote. These characters are built tough.
Did you have plans for Mighty Avengers before you left? Diego Camacho asks.
Yeah, totally. There's like a secret-y thing I'd been seeding in all these non-Spider-Man books. When you read all my other stuff for Marvel, it was called The Reckoning War. And it was kind of seeded in She-Hulk. It was seeded in the Initiative. There's like little hints and pieces of the Reckoning War in almost everything outside of Spidey I ever did. So every now and then I go to a convention and someone goes, "Hey, you ever going to get to the Reckoning War?" And I would go, "Yeah, I'll get to it. And we would have gotten to it in Mighty Avengers. We would have hit the Reckoning War. So
this is a controversial one, but I think it's okay to ask it.
Okay, go for it.
How has Bendis' leaving Marvel affected the company?
How has Bendis' leaving the company affected Marvel?
Or has it?
Has it? I don't see how it couldn't, because Brian has been such a driving force, that he's, one of the things Brian doesn't get enough credit for, when you watch Iron Man 1 and you get to that post-credit scene when Nick Fury shows up, that was that movie Brain Trust move. That was Brian's idea. Brian ghost wrote that scene. The whole interconnectivity. That is the start of the interconnectivity of the Marvel Universe, that shared universe franchise that everyone is trying to duplicate in all of Hollywood. And Brian was the acorn of that. Brian was the guy. He was there. So, everything, he Jessica Jones, Miles Morales, Ultimate Spider-Man. There's so many things that Brian Michael Bendis added to the fabric of the current Marvel universe. And I don't just mean that as comics. I mean that everywhere. When you turn on Jessica Jones on Netflix, Brian has been a force in comics. And now he will be a force in comics at DC Comics. Mm-hmm. Marvel is indebted to him for everything he's done. So yeah, there's it will totally have an effect that he was here and he goes there. We wish him well. But at the same time, it's when you're pushed to the edge. It's when suddenly everything shifts. That's when you get a fire in your belly. That's when, okay, that just happened. Fine. You know what? Roll up the sleeves. Okay.
And somebody can step up. There can be a young writer who can maybe step up and take his spot now. And any guesses who those might be?
I don't think anyone's going to be the next Brian. I think Donnie Coates will be the first Donnie Coates. I think Matt will be the first Matt. I think, Ed Brisson will be the next Ed. That you don't get to be the next Brian. You get to be you, and you get to stun the world. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, there will be stuff, and we will. You give someone you can look at it as an obstacle, or you can look at it as a challenge. And I'm ready for the challenge.
Dan, what are we going to do? This is an interesting question. I guess it's a little bit embarrassing. All right, first of all, you'd work with me, even though I'm a Republican, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Somebody wants to know what we would do together.
Do you eat babies? I think that's my line in the sand. Do you eat babies?
I don't eat babies.
Good, we can work together.
Babies. I have one.
Yay! What's he taste?
What would we do together? If, let's say Marvel said, Ethan's coming over here, you have to create a book for him, what would it be?
Ooh, man. Okay, what would be my Marvel Ethan book? Ooh. I would like to do something that was like, one of the fun things about Surfer was we were off in our corner and no one messed with us. We could do our own thing and go our own way. I would kind of go like, okay, what's a corner of the Marvel universe where Ethan and I could go crazy? Like maybe we could do something like Imperial Guard, or Starjammers, do something where like, yeah, we're doing our own thing. We're like Cosmic X-Men doing cosmic-y X stuff.
Micronauts.
Oh, if only we could. There's legal.
Can't do it? No.
Can't do it. The Fantastic Four.
Listen. Okay, when that comes back, that's going to be a thing for me. I love the Fantastic Four.
When or if that comes back, there's going to be they're just going to throw a whole bunch of writers and artists in the pit, and whoever emerges out the side, everyone wants
to bring a shank. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a DC fan.
No,
I'm happy on that.
Everybody wants to do Fantastic Four.
All right, let's see. Jeff Myers, thank you for a huge super chat. Ethan, if this is how writers and artists work, would you consider doing a piece based on your impressions of Dan's Silver Surfer musings? Maybe auction the piece off, give the proceeds to Dan's favorite charity. Well, I mean, I think it'd be the least I could do. Dan was good enough to come and spend time with us. And I will consider doing that. I have deadlines. I'm really busy, but.
No, we have to put out books, but if there was a time, I would love to see the money of that go to the Heroes Initiative.
That's a great idea. I love the Heroes Initiative. All right, so let's see. Emily asks, thank you for the super chat. Dan, I've been reading comics for 13 years, but have only been a DC gal. What are your top Marvel recs to get started in the universe?
Ooh, okay. If I had to pick, from recent Marvel lore, Ed Brubaker's Captain America run is golden. That's like all the Winter Soldier stuff you've seen in the movies. So Ed's, I would say Ed Brubaker's, his Cap, Mark Waid's Fantastic Four with Ringo is just prime. Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four too was beautiful. Bendis's Ultimate Spider-Man. One of the best Spider-Man stories you're ever going to read is the second trade paperback, Learning Curve. It's just, oh my God, it's one of the best Spider-Man stories. It's so good, of modern day Marvel. For me, modern day Marvel goes back 18 years. So I'm just trying to think. Oh God, Grant Morrison X-Men is really good.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and, oh God, other Marvel stuff, modern Marvel stuff. I love Willow's Ms. Marvel, and I'm a big fan of Ryan and Erica's Squirrel Girl, and Jason Aaron's Thor. The whole run of it, the whole run of Jason Aaron's Thor, with the God Butcher, and even with like Odin's son, and with the new female Thor, and the stuff that's coming up. Jason Aaron is the one guy, when we're in the retreats, everyone's telling all their stories of what they're going to do for the year, and when Jason starts talking, it's kind of like a magic campfire starts, and everyone just kind of leans in.
Really?
And listens to Jason Aaron tell his story through his beard. It's just like everyone's transported. And
story time is the best thing about comics. Doing comics.
Yeah, and grown men in the room and women when he hits key moments, kind of go, oh! And it's when Jason Aaron's talking. So yeah, read your Jason Aaron books.
All right. So how'd you like Thor Ragnarok?
Oh, I loved it. My one beat was sometimes I thought they went too funny, and that they should have pulled back the humor a little so that you could experience some of the epicness on a serious level, because there was some serious stuff that happened. But I thought it was one of Marvel's best. In my mind, it's up there with the first Guardians of the Galaxy.
That was
I would put it at that level. It was really good.
Somebody said they want to know, Nasser 13 wants to know your favorite band.
My favorite, I'm like, the weird thing is, the more work I've been doing, I find it really hard to listen to music that has lyrics while I'm scripting. So a lot of the stuff that I have is instrumental, where it'll be movie soundtracks or jazz or classical, where I don't have to, because if I hear lyrics, it messes me up while I'm writing. But if I'm just having fun, I'm walking down the street, a lot of times I have the Hamilton soundtrack on, or I'm a sucker for the Moana soundtrack. I love Moana, shut up. And but like a lot of times I really like the nerd rock of Jonathan Colton. Yeah, is someone I really like. So if you ever played Portal, he's the guy that wrote like, "This is a science." That's
all right. I'm gonna push him, guys. They're asking. Squirrel Girl, explain why you like Squirrel Girl.
Okay. Here's the thing. You're talking to that after Steve Ditko did his one with Murray, did that one Squirrel Girl story. For years, she was a joke. No one, you never saw her in a story, but sometimes every now and then a character would bring her up as a joke, as like the worst superhero possible. And when I got to do Great Lake Avengers around like 2005, I gave myself the goal that I was going to redeem Squirrel Girl. That up till then she'd only appeared in one story, and I got her into the Great Lake Avengers. And the funny thing was, 2 weeks later, DeMatteis and McGuire were doing a Defenders run, and they made a play for Squirrel Girl. She hadn't been used in years, in over a decade. And they went, okay, we want to put Squirrel Girl in the Defenders. And they went, oh, you're too late. Slott put her in Great Lake Avengers. So, weird. So if I hadn't made that play, you would have gotten a different Squirrel Girl. But you look at everything between when Ryan picks it up, it was just me, man. I was like doing everything.
They're saying Squirrel Girl was great in Slott's GLA.
Yeah, she was in GL. I would use her. She would guest star in Spider-Man. She would guest star in The Thing. I was using her everywhere. I was like the only person using her. And then I loved it when we were at one of the Marvel summits, and Bendis asked the room, he wanted a nanny for Jessica Jones and Luke Cage's baby, Danny. And he said, he asked the room, like, I need a superhero character no one's using to be a nanny. And Joe Quesada loved the Great Lake Avengers, and he joked, Squirrel Girl. And I went, yes! And then Vince was trying to backwalk it. He was like, no, not Squirrel Girl. And I was like getting everybody psyched, Squirrel Girl. And suddenly Squirrel Girl was in New Avengers. And I was like the happiest person.
You did it. You got to bring back Power Pack, though, and make them stick. That's for me. I love Power Pack.
I love Power Pack.
Weezy Simonson needs to come back. And I don't know if she ever will. But anyway, that would be for me.
The thing about Squirrel Girl is Squirrel Girl was never designed. And you're talking to a Squirrel Girl, not just an aficionado. You're talking to the guy that did the heaviest lifting to bring this character into the Marvel Universe. You're talking to the guy that wrote her first ever animated appearance.
They're not arguing with you. They're telling you they like what you did with her.
Championed this character like crazy. Okay. So you're talking about like outside of the guy who created her, Murray and Ditko. You're talking to the guy who's done the most work on her before Ryan. I love everything Ryan is doing, and I love everything Erica is doing. She was never designed to be an attractive standard character. She was never designed to be this character with big boobs. The fun that we did with her was that she had, this great body image of herself, and she was outgoing, and she didn't, she never said no. She was very outside the box of what a character is supposed to be. And I love that about her. And I think if you want to see a character that looks cute or sexy or whatever, there's 15,000 characters at Marvel. Go gravitate to Firestar or Jubilee or somebody else.
Firestar is sexy, I have to say.
Yeah, let Squirrel Girl be Squirrel Girl. It's not hurting you. And if you don't like Squirrel Girl, don't read it. Right. Move on to the next thing, and there you go. Find something that you love and care about and read that. Because don't try to make Squirrel Girl something she's not. What she is now is she's this character that every time they put out a collection, it's one of the best-selling Marvel collections. So if it's not the thing for you, it's the thing for somebody else. Let them have that.
I'm getting yelled at for not being conservative enough here. Guys. I don't think this has to do with politics. All right. So let's see. We got a nice super chat here question. And this is actually pretty neat. I don't know how much you're going to be able to say. But, Dan, from your insider view, thank you, Alton Davis, by the way. From your insider view, what new trends and tones do you see in Marvel 2018?
That is a good question. I'm trying to figure out ways to say this without spoiling things. There's this kind of ethos now that we're trying to get, and I think you can see it in the house ads and the things we're doing in Legacy, to get back to the core vein of the Marvel we all know and love. That I think one of the problems we had is that for a while that every single writer, there was no one who came down from above with a mandate saying, you have to write female Thor. You have to put a new person in Iron Man. You have to do this. Now, every writer was approaching these books and telling the stories they wanted to tell. And in the old days, if you had, like, let's say you're having a run of the Avengers, suddenly, oh my God, Steve Rogers isn't Captain America anymore. I keep getting U.S. Agent. I've written U.S. Agent. I get his name wrong because he kept having different names that were different alcohols. He was Jack Daniels at one point. It was like what? Help me out, guys, online. What are the U.S. Agent code names?
U.S. Agent code names?
Yeah. What was his secret identity? U.S. Agent.
John Walker, someone said?
Johnny Walker. Yeah. So he was like John Walker. He was Jack Daniels. I had a joke when I was doing U.S. Agent. I was going to keep changing his name. He was going to be Budweiser. Because it was always alcohol. It was like his names were so silly, but he was Johnny Walker. But yeah, for a while, Steve Rogers was in Captain America, and John Walker was, and then Steve was the captain, and Rhodey was War Machine, and Thor was Eric Masterson, and you had all these different characters, and suddenly you looked at the Avengers, and you're like, who are these guys? And their different costumes and their different names. And it, kind of in our heart of hearts, we know who the characters are. You kind of, when you think of Avengers, you think of that, most of the, like, guys our age, we think of like the George Perez run. You kind of have your sweet spots. When you think Daredevil, you see him with Elektra and Bullseye. When you see Cap, maybe he's with the Falcon. There's certain things where like this kind of like core vein version, like the version that stuck the most, you always want to kind of gravitate it to it. I think we started doing too many things that started going off in too many different directions. And the Marvel, it wasn't that you had a woman Thor or you had a, this character. It's suddenly Peter Parker was super rich, and over here, it didn't feel like your Marvel universe. Too many things were pulling in too many different directions. If you had just done one thing and let the others more, it would still feel like Marvel, but the fact that everything was going off. So now I think you're going to see more in the Marvel universe in 2018, things more closer to the vein of the Marvel you know and love from when you're the most nostalgic, but taking those ideas and moving them forward and telling new stories. So it'll feel more Marvel, but it'll be going in weird places.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
There are people who are asking me to argue with you more. And guys, I have to say, that's not what I'm here to do. I'm basically here. Dan's my guest, and I'm trying to get the best out of Dan. So if you're a big Dan Slott fan, you're going to hear, we're not here to fight. Trying to get him to say as much as he can about what he thinks and how he feels. You guys can argue about it on Twitter later.
Wait. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Boom. Come on. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Oh, I can't put it off camera.
Oh, I had paper. Go ahead. Do it again. Ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3.
It's both scissors. Okay, see.
Okay, one more time. 1, 2, 3.
There, we fought. Are you happy? We fought.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Let's get another. I mean, you guys, some of you have political questions. If you just phrased them a little bit nicer, I would ask them. But a lot of these are just. All right. Thank you for the super chat. Should Marvel stop rebooting to issue 1 constantly to attract new readers, make big numbers?
We're actually, with the legacy issues, we've actually gone back to the super original numbers. So you're seeing books like now in the 600s, 700s, and a certain book is getting close to 800.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. And then how many like 100s will you have written? 600, 700, and then maybe 800?
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting 800. I just turned in the plot last week for 798.
All right. This is an interesting question. I'm going to ask this just as it's written. Oh, you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I just got a cough.
You want to get a drink?
No, I'm good. It's a cough.
Okay. Andrea LT asks, can you ask for advice for someone with anxiety about Tumblr and Twitter because politics? Are there platforms that editors check that are apolitical? Thank you for having this talk. Do you understand?
No. I think you're going to find, even with editors and writers and artists, that their feeds aren't company feeds. Their feeds are personal feeds. They're not there to represent the company. They're there because it's like, how do I put it? Spider-Man is 1/5 of my life. I've been on the book close to 10 years. It's a character I've loved all my life. I'm going to have a Spider-Man logo, a little thing in my avatar. I'm going to talk about Spider-Man because Spider-Man's part of my life. I'm going to talk about what TV shows I like. I'm going to talk about you know, what comics I'm reading. I'm going to talk about politics because it's my life and it's the world I live in. If you want to avoid someone's politics in their feed, just look at the look at Marvel's Twitter feed. Don't look at my Twitter feed. Don't look at, some other writer's Twitter feed or Gail Simone's Twitter feed, because those are our Twitter feeds as people.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's
sorry. Is it a she, Andrea, or is it an Italian fella? I don't know. It's Andrea LT. Follows up, says, I asked because many artists on Tumblr get harassed and death threats for not sticking to politics well enough. We know all about that.
My way of dealing with it has been shutting the door. I find that most things like Instagram or Facebook or Twitter have block features or mute features. And if, I've gone through death threats. I've gone through, like, if you've been following this feed tonight, I've sat down at a table with stacks and stacks of death threats. I've had to get my phone number changed because, of all things, someone was mad, not about something I did with Spider-Man or She-Hulk or, Avengers. Someone was mad at something that another writer did with US Agent, and I was crossing over with them. But they were able to find my phone number and not his. So I was getting calls at 3 a.m. going, why did you let that happen to US Agent, Dan?
That's scary.
Yeah. So I'm like, I used to always be listed. Now I'm not. And there's been other things that have happened too, where I go, the fan community only gets this much of me. They only get as much as I'm willing to give. And if anything even gets remotely rude or in my face, I shut the door. The only other option is get offline. And I'm not going to do that. Screw that. I'm not giving that person that satisfaction. If someone's greatest satisfaction in their life or someone gets a big thrill out of the fact that I blocked them, then, oh my God, aim higher. There's more important things in life than who blocked you. But if that makes you happy, I'm happy you're happy.
What about people who are sad that you blocked them? Because, there's the whole thing about, and this is, I think, probably the number one thing that people have been asking about block bots and people who feel like, boy, they'd really like to have access to the things that you say and also the things that say diversity in comics and the people who follow that channel.
I don't care. I honestly don't care. Social media is one aspect of it's one facet. And I'm gonna, if you were following some site that, and I'm not saying it's that site, if you were following a site and that site aggressively went after one of my friends, and I know the full story of that friend, and the person who was running that other site didn't, and they were saying things I knew to be false and things I knew to be lies and things I knew to be hurtful, I am perfectly fine shutting that site off and not having anything to do with it. And if I see people promoting that site and helping that site and encouraging that site, I don't need to talk to them either. My friendship with the other people are more important. That's real life. I don't care about little pixels on a screen. At the end of the day, a lot of people are pixels on a screen. They choose a screen name, they choose an avatar. They're not being who they are in real life. They're being a persona. And I don't worry about hurting the feelings of a persona. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about my friend over there that terrible things have happened to because of things online. To me, it's such a distinction that it's weird for me for people to have such strong feelings about this internet persona and not about this real person. So it's, don't care.
Okay, last question, I'll let you go. And this is more of a business question. So you know, it's a super chat from Nostalgia and Criticism. Thank you. The Marvel lenticulars are coming as a hard. Okay, you ready for this?
Yeah, bring it.
You're like, all right, bring it on. The Marvel lenticulars are coming as a hard sell for most comic book shops. What is Marvel trying to do to help our LCSs from losing money?
Okay. There's a number of things that you know that Marvel does to try to help the local comic shops. And the weird thing is there'll always be you know, you could have some thing where on some level some people are so willing to demonize Marvel that, like, if Marvel gave away free milk and cookies, the next day there'd be a thing going, Marvel trying to give lactose intolerant people a problem. Where, like, for example, overships. Marvel had a thing where they were looking at how much money was at the local comic shops and how much people were ordering. So Marvel was like, we'll send free copies. And you can have these free copies. So there'll be stuff on, if we think you underordered, you can have these free copies. Free copies. And if you sell them, keep the money. If you can't sell them, feel free to give them away. So suddenly you had a situation where Marvel was giving free copies of comics, and fans were like, why are they overshipping? What are they trying to do? Like, oh God, there's like a no-win scenario.
People have been overshipping. I should point this out. I mean, companies have been overshipping as long as I've been working in comics, from the sense that sometimes people go, the comic shop doesn't know what they're missing. They don't understand that this is going to be a good book, and they severely underordered it, and we need the book out there. And we know that if we give them 3 times as many of this, they're going to come back for the next issue once they see how well it's going to sell through.
There are certain things that happen, and it's frustrating. You know, I'm not a, you know, I say I'm not a fan of variants because I just want you to read the comic. But I got to admit, every now and then there's a variant and I go, oh, that's cool. I really want that. Or I see a book that I care about that gets a boost in sales and more people get to read it because it had a variant. So it's kind of hard for me to be against it.
Why disenfranchise the collector's market? There are people who want to collect these rare comics. I don't understand getting rid of variants.
I totally get it. I kind of I talk to friends who are friends I had before I got into the comic industry who are still comic fans. And something I hear a lot, and I've done it too, is buying the same comic twice by mistake. Because you're like, oh, it's the same comic with a different cover. I wasn't paying attention to the number. Damn it. You know, it's, you know, I get why we do it, and it's cool. And every now and then there'll be something where, you know, I'll see the prototype or I'll see the thing and I'll go, that is the stupidest idea ever. And then I see it in practice and I go, that's amazing. Like, I felt that way about sketch variant covers when they first came out.
Yeah.
You're putting out a blank cover. That's the stupid. And then you get someone to do a sketch variant cover for you and you go, I love this. You've now given me, I now have this unique cover. I now love sketch variant cover. So I'm the worst person to ask about this because something will happen and I'll go, well, that's stupid, or I don't like that. But then it comes out and it's great. Like, I was against the Spider-Gwen costume. I was against it because I had written the first Spider-Gwen sequence before Jason and Robbie ever got the assignment. And I was the one who suggested they had made a pitch called Spider-Ben about a world in Spider-Verse where Uncle Ben gets the spider bite. And I said, no, we already have that character and he's really integral to Spider-Verse. You can't tell his backstory. But we have a spider version of Gwen. Would you guys like to do that? Like, they should do that. So I was the guy that pushed for them to do Spider-Gwen. No one sent them my notes on what her costume should look like. And I had this very specific image in my head. And I'd written that scene like a year earlier, her first appearance. And in my mind, like that was like, it was in my head and I knew what it looked like. And then Robbie showed up with this design and I immediately hated it because it wasn't the thing in my head. And it took everybody to yell at me going, no, this is like one of the best costume designs in years. Shut up, you're wrong. I'm like, but it's not my Spider-Gwen. They're like, just go with it. And I was like, you know, at the end of the day, I think this is my strength, is that like, if enough people come at me and go, here's the deal, I go, okay. So yeah. So I was almost the idiot who stopped the greatest costume of the
great costume design. Yeah, it was unusual. It's unusual.
Yeah. You go to any con and there's like 12 Spider-Gwens, and I'm like, damn, you know, I was so wrong. I'm so glad that like I didn't let pride get in the way, and I was able to go, yeah, okay, do it. You know.
Before we go, why do you love Peter Parker?
I love Peter Parker because he's you. To me, there's so many characters that the entry level point where you're the fan, you go, that's me. I get that. Like a lot of people have that connection with Batman where they go, I could be Batman. If I trained every night, if I did all this, if I was that driven, you know, yes, I'm not a millionaire, but if I really tried really hard, I could be Batman. So a lot of people have that connection with Batman. Spider-Man is you with superpowers. In the Marvel universe, it's always the world outside your window. Something about it feels a little more real to me than the DC universe, where to me the characters are more like gods. It's more like a pantheon of heroes. Marvel, it's more like a collection of misfits. It's these weird, if you got powers, they'd be stupid superpowers. You've got the powers of a spider. Like, that's weird. You walk up a wall, you're kind of gross, you know, spider sense. It's such a weird collection of powers. The thing I like about it, it all comes out of Amazing Fantasy 15. Spider-Man's you. He's not, yes, Peter Parker's a genius, but there's things about you that are special, whoever you are. Spider-Man's you. He's the guy down the block. He's the guy, he's your cousin. He's that guy you know from Brooklyn. He's that guy over there in Queens. He's someone you know. And he's you. He's the outcast. He's the nerd who got these powers and they mess up his life. You know how like when you go to meet somebody and if you're picking some place that's close to where you live, a lot of times you get there late because things just get in your way. Where if you're going to meet someone and it's really far away, you plan ahead and you give yourself space and you get there ahead of time or on time. Spider-Man's you. It's like all these things keep getting in your way. Your life should be easier for these powers, but it's one thing after another. There's something wonderful about that. Like everyone can associate with Spider-Man. Everyone had a Flash Thompson who picked on him. Everyone, you know, has that, you know, girl you didn't hook up with, you know, that you didn't connect with, like Betty. Everyone has that. Everyone has that person like J. Jonah Jameson that's like so freaking annoying and keeps getting in your way and has it out for you. You know, there's Spider-Man is you. When I was talking to Roger Stern, he was working in comics. Like, nowadays comics are 20 pages, and you get guys like me and Mark Waid together and we have laments because we were writing comics in 22 pages. And now when we have to write 20-page comics, it's like a phantom limb. It's like we keep feeling these 2 missing pages. Where in Roger Stern's era, they were writing 17-page comics.
Really?
Then, yeah. There's a certain run where you start reading your Marvel comics, you didn't notice it, but they were down to 17 pages. And at one point they went to Roger Stern and went, oh, and all the guys of his era, and went, we're going up to 22. And Roger says when he was writing Spider-Man, he went from 17 to 22. He knew what he was doing with all 5 of his pages. All 5 were going to be Peter Parker pages with all soap opera. Not more Spidey jumping around, not more Spidey punching Electro. 5 pages of Aunt May being sick, or 5 pages of Mary Jane at the coffee bean. You know, just like, that's fantastic. You know, it's like, I dream of that. I'm like, oh my God, if someone tapped me on the shoulder tomorrow, Marvel, and said, you get 5 more pages, oh, everything would be perfect.
It wouldn't take up too much more time. It would be a good thing.
No, it would be a good thing. I constantly have to. I constantly write these 25-page stories, and I have to carve 5 pages out. So yeah, it would be great.
Dan, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Ethan. Thanks, guys, for checking in.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed yourself. I think a lot of people. This was a hugely, in case you didn't know, big event, and the chat was. So it was fantastic. So I'm going to stop the broadcast. I'm going to say good night to you privately.
Okay.
And thank you everyone for tuning in. And you know, listen, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. Tell your friends. Comic Artist Pro Secrets. We'll get more great guests on, like Dan Slott, and we'll do more of these kind of hangouts where we'll talk about what it is to be a comic book pro. Okay. So thanks a lot and have a great night. Bye bye.